Hey guys, welcome back to the next video. In this video, we are going to talk about a new section, and this section talks about Dockerfile. So going forward, you may be creating some Dockerfile under the layers, and sometimes you will be directly running it based on the requirement of that particular program or the section. So here I have a simple Docker file, which we will be working with sometimes. And there is this layered based Docker file, which is something which we will be working as well to understand the layers of Docker. Now, firstly, let's understand what the simple Docker file meaning that. So a simple Docker file has two procedures over here. One is to pull the Docker file from Docker repository or Docker registry, and then to execute it or to run that image, and it becomes a container. So you can see that here we can use Docker search HTTPD, as in like this is a specific service or your image which we are searching for. And that's going to bring up a huge number of results from your Docker repository and other repositories as well. Now you can simply use Docker pull to pull that particular image, and it basically gets it downloaded on your local system. And you can pretty much see that using Docker images command, and you can see the images on your system, which you have on your system. You can also use Docker image ls. So that is also another alternative command which you can use to see the images on your system. And then you run the Docker with the Docker run with the image name, and it becomes a container. So this is a very simple way of invoking Docker container in terms of a simple Docker environment. When you talk about an advanced Docker file, so this basically is, again, the same logic is still behind this, wherein which it works on three principles over here. One is to customize, build, and run. So these are the three basic steps towards running a container. So here in this example, there was no way that we can customize this image. So this image has been written and it has been uploaded in the Docker registry, in which you pull this image and run this image as it is. So the customization will be done inside the container while you're running the container. So while this image is being running. In terms of a Docker file, the customization will be made right before you start your container. So which means that you have an option over here to customize what you're going to download, what you're going to pre-install before you go ahead and do this. So for example, in this scenario that I want to CentOS operating system, and which has this gzip installed as a prerequisites before I even start this as a, or in initialize it as a container or run it as a container. So this is the requirement in this scenario. So what I do is, like, rather than downloading a CentOS image directly and then logging into the container, installing the gzip option, I have designed a Docker file, this is configured with YAML file extension, and basically has step-by-step instruction in terms of working with this. Please ignore the typo over here. So this is the first instruction where it is going to download the CentOS operating system, or if it's available locally, it's going to use that image. And then on top of that, it's going to use this yum-y install gzip. Now, do remember that it comes with its own complication, because CentOS by default disables all the repositories, so which means that it's going to need additional step for it to install gzip. So we'll talk in detail about it, but I just want to put in like the minimalistic items over here so we can avoid complications while talking about the architecture. Do remember that this is the Docker file in which you will have this. And when you run this Docker file, you actually build the Docker file. So when you build this, you kind of get an image out of it, and then you kind of run this image, and that's basically what you will get. So when you run this image, it's going to create all these prerequisites, and then it's going to run the gzip and make sure that the gzip is installed and ready for you when you actually get into the container. So there is this two different methods. One is like you install gzip after getting into a container, and there is this method where you will have a gzip when you enter the container, so which is much easier. So in this example, it's gzip. It could be a software like Oracle database. It could be MySQL database. It could be your application server or your some kind of a development application which you want to have it pre-installed before you enter into a container. So these are some of the scenarios which we are talking about. So this video is more focused on this architecture diagram and nothing more. So I hope that you understood what actually is a Dockerfile, and this is exactly a Dockerfile, so which is gonna be built, and while running the container, whatever is over here would have been executed while it created a container. There are certain parts which is going to be executed as part of building, and there are certain parts which is going to be executed while you're running a container. So there are these two different stuff which we will talk later on when we are talking about layers of the Docker file system. Thank you so much for watching this again. Your review means everything to me. I'll see you on the next video.